Woods had an unwavering dedication that brought her into law school. She fought for justice with her own passion and style. In this presentation, we're going to dive into the world of moral duty, ethics, and principles in Acuña's style.
Might not be blunt, but we're going to show you Acuña's deontology theories and humanist ethics with the same energy as Elwood's emits, with passion, confidence, and elegance. You know, ethics isn't just a word you read in rule books. It is much more than that, especially in the real world.
Don't worry, Pooh Bear. You won't need a law degree or to be blonde to follow along. We're not from the East Coast. So, just grab your stylish pen and classy paper and listen along. In order to fully understand our module, we must recall first what is deontology. We all learned in the previous lessons that philosophers have two takes on the question, what is morally right?
For teleologists, the rightness of an act rests solely on the consequences of the act. It is non-negotiable. While for deontologists, an act is morally right on the basis of the nature of the act alone. The consequences are unimportant. For deontologists, the concept of the nature of an act does not have a unitary meaning. An action is right if it follows a moral rule and wrong if it goes against it, regardless of an outcome. That is pure deontology. While in mixed deontology, an action is judged not only by whether it follows a moral rule but also by considering its consequences.
Now, you might wonder, akala ko ba hindi bumabase ang deontologist sa consequences of the action? Well, you're absolutely right. Traditional or pure deontologists don't. However, in this case, mixed deontologists think that real-life moral decisions are complex, so they would consider favorable consequences as relevant variables that can defeat the wrongness of an act. So bale, they still consider that the act is wrong, based on the moral rule. Pero, para sa kanila, mayroong mga factors na nalalamangan yung maling gawain. For example, cheating. Pure deontologists will say that cheating is wrong itself because it is against the moral rule, and no divisible conditions will make it right. Whereas for mixed deontologists, they would admit that cheating is wrong, but they would also admit that the act might have some divisible conditions or consequences depending on the result of or the consequences of the act. These favorable consequences of cheating will make it right rather than wrong, in this particular case only. Another controversial example is abortion. People have two takes on the topic of whether we should legalize it or not. If you ask a pure deontologist, he or she would definitely be against the idea, for the reason that abortion is killing a fetus or an unborn child. It is murder, and it is morally wrong. No questions asked. On the other hand, mixed deontologists will agree that, yes, abortion is wrong. However, they might consider exceptions based on specific circumstances. They could argue that while abortion is generally wrong, there are situations where it might be morally acceptable, such as the well-being of the mother, the potential harm of bringing a child into unlivable conditions, or the trauma associated with the pregnancy can justify an exception to the general rule against abortion.
To better understand the nature of deontology, let me introduce you to our not-so-girl boss in the world of ethics, Immanuel Kant. Immanuel Kant is the most famous pure-rule deontologist. His entire ethical system is founded on one moral rule called categorical imperative. I meant categorical imperative. He opposed Hume's egoism and Bentham's utilitarianism. He insisted that what makes an act right or wrong should not rest on the consequences, either one's own good or the greatest good for the greatest number. According to Kant, no act can be considered good without qualification except goodwill. By goodwill, Kant meant acting with the right intentions in accordance with the correct maxims, doing one's duty for duty's sake, and surely not for the anticipated consequences for oneself or for the greatest number.
There is an important distinction that must be clarified on set: acting in conformity with duty and acting for the sake of duty, meaning doing the duty itself is not enough. One must act for the sake of duty itself. We'll dive deeper into that later on. According to Kant, all moral agents are rational. The justification of morality is to demonstrate that it is rational, and to justify any moral rule is to demonstrate that it is in accord with the principles of reason. Don't forget that Kant is a pure deontologist. So, the idea of his morality is that there is no possibility of defeasible conditions for whatever kind of consequences. To demonstrate that an act is wrong, you have to show that the maxim on which it rests is contradictory and absurd. And this is where the universalizability test will enter.
In the universalizability test, Kant asked himself, can I will that my maxim becomes a universal law? There are three steps that will show if an act is morally wrong or right. I'll take it to the court to further understand.
Our case is that stealing an expensive toy that you cannot afford to buy. Ask yourself, can I will that my maxim becomes a universal law? First step is to state the maxim of your action. It is alright to steal if you cannot afford to buy it. Then, turn it into a moral rule for everyone to follow. It is alright for everybody to steal from anybody, provided what you are stealing are things you cannot afford. Lastly, ask yourself if that becomes a universal law. What do you think will happen? Everybody will steal from everybody else. And no, that cannot happen. They cannot steal my cat. The absurd will be chaos and disorder. The very institution of trust in your neighbor will be undermined. And when there is no trust, the possibility of stealing from your neighbor will be very difficult since they now protect their property from everybody. So, our maxim is morally wrong, since it is self-contradictory to do if universalized and cannot be implemented. Please note that the consequences of such moral laws are not his concern. His concern is with the contradiction of will, that action is immoral whose intent cancels and destroys itself when it is made a universal rule. This is the reason why stealing is morally wrong. It is self-contradictory. An act is moral if the intent of the action in harmony with itself when it is made into a universal rule. Therefore, all universal maxims must pass the test of reason or self-consistency. This places the faculty of reason at the center of morality and the single ultimate rule, the categorical imperative, as the sole criterion of morality. The time is ripe for us to consider Kant's categorical imperative.
In this passage, he stated that the faculty of reason is our ability to think, understand, and decide. Objective principle is the rule that applies for everyone, and imperative are the commands that tells us what we ought to do.
For example, in the movie, Elle Woods did not tell Brooke's secret to the lawyers as she said, "I promised to keep her secret, and it is wrong to break the bond of sisterhood." In this context, the moral rule is that promises should be kept. Now, the hypothetical imperative is if Elle did not tell the secret to gain recognition from Brooke, as Brooke is a highly respected individual. She followed what is morally right to achieve something. But the reason Elle kept the secret is because keeping the promise itself is morally right, and that's what she believes in. Therefore, she acted for the sake of duty itself, and that shows the categorical imperative.
Kant states categorical imperative in five principal ways. The first one is formula of universal law. We are admonished to act on maxims that apply to everybody. Negatively, it means that we are not allowed to make any concession in favor of our own self-interest. Therefore, universality is the essence of morality. Next is the formula of the law of nature. Kant is not saying that the moral law is a law of nature. If they were identical, then there would be no need for moral obligation because we would all be morally perfect. He was using it merely as an analogy to guide our decisions. Third is a formula of the end in itself. Our respect for every individual human being will limit our choices. We must act only on moral rules that are applicable to the whole of humanity and never use anybody as a means for attaining our ends. To treat a person simply as a means would be to treat them as a thing. You have failed to regard them as a moral agent capable of legislating a moral law. The next one is a formula of autonomy. It qualifies that this law is not imposed from the outside but emanates from your own will. Your will as a rational moral agent makes the moral law. This was Kant's solution to the problem of moral obligation. We have to obey the moral law since it is the law of human reason. If we don't obey it, we contradict our own nature. All human beings are capable of legislating universal law. Here lies man's intrinsic worth and equality. And the last one is formula of the kingdom of ends. Kant's kingdom of ends is a vision of a perfect society where everyone treats each other with respect, as valuable individuals, not as tools to get what we want. This leads to the idea that a good society would be a democracy where everyone has a say in the laws and everyone's dignity is honored.
Hi everyone, I'm Althea. For today, we're going to talk about something that's totally important to everyone, humanist ethics. Sounds fancy, right? But don't worry, I'll make it totally relatable. And hey, if Ella can ace law school while staying true to her fabulous self, I'm pretty sure we can all wrap our heads around a little ethics too. You're probably thinking why I'm wearing pink. It's because we'll be using Elwoods as a reference. You're probably thinking, Elwoods in ethics? Yes, I know. It's like having a 4.0 GPA at History of Volca and then proceeding to law school. They don't exactly match. She's not exactly the person you'd expect to talk about philosophy, but guess what? She's not just a blonde lawyer who loves pink. She's a philosopher in her own right. And today, we're going to explore how this whole humanist ethics thing is not just for philosophers, it's for everyone. So, here's the deal. Humanist ethics is all about developing your full human potential and helping others do the same. It's about self improvement, helping others, and creating a world where every person can be the best version of themselves. And just like in her journey at Harvard Law, it's not just about making yourself successful, it's about lifting others up with you. And in the end, if we all have the right opportunities, we can be truly happy. And who doesn't want that? I know I do. Let's break this down step by step, and I'll explain this humanist concept in a way that makes sense. And trust me, I'll make it as fun as a pen and snap. So let's start with something you'll probably recognize right away: humanism. So let's start. Humanist ethics really is all about one thing: human potential. It's about you being the best version of yourself and helping others do the same. And if we really want to build a world where people can fully shine, you have to focus on making sure that everyone gets a chance to develop. Because let's face it, if we're gonna talk about doing good in the world, we have to make sure we have all the right opportunities. Humanism traces its origins to ancient Greece, with thinkers like Pythagoras so famously stated, "Man is the measure of all things." This phrase captures the essence of humanism, that human beings are capable of rational thought, and through their reasoning they can understand truth, beauty, and morality. Socrates further emphasized self-knowledge, suggesting that wisdom lies in knowing one's duties to oneself, others, and the divine. This approach laid the groundwork for the ethical system of humanism. By the second century before Christ, Roman thinkers began to adapt the Greek tradition, with the term humanitas signifying cultivated intelligence. Roman humanism emphasized the rational capacities of humans and their potential for growth, which would later influence Renaissance humanism. During the Italian Renaissance, humanism represented a rejection of the superstition and authoritarianism of the Middle Ages. It championed the worth and potential of human beings, stressing that humans could shape their own destiny. And what does this look like? Well, it's like when Elle made it into Harvard Law, she wasn't just there to look cute, you think. She was there because of a boy. No, silly. She was there because she believed in herself. And she knew that if she wanted to change the world, she needed the right opportunities. And everybody deserved those same opportunities, no matter who they are or where they come from. Now, we've all heard of teleology and deontology, right? But in humanist ethics, we combine both. It's like mixing the best of both worlds. You know how in Legally Blonde, when Elle stands up for what she believes in, she's doing it not just because it's right, but because it's also about making the world better. Well, that's kind of the same idea. You look at the consequences of your action and also whether your action aligned with your moral duty. It's a balance. And guess what? That's what we're here to talk about today. How to find that balance. The humanist imperative. Humanism has reasserted itself in the modern era, manifesting in various forms such as naturalist, Christian, and existentialist humanism. Despite its resurgence, humanism still lacks a fully developed ethical framework and analogous to systems like those of Bentham, Mill, or Kant. A central tenet of humanism is that humans have an inherent duty to develop their full potentials in all aspects: cognitive, emotional, aesthetic, moral, and spiritual. The imperative to fulfill this potential is seen as an unconditional obligation. Specification of humanist ethics. This includes defining key concepts such as intrinsic good, the development of human potentials, moral obligation, actions that promote the development of human potentials, and justice, ensuring opportunities for development. Society plays a crucial role in facilitating or hindering human development. Societal structures must be evaluated based on how well they provide opportunities for individuals to develop their human potentials. The theory of man. The humanist view of man is dynamic and evolving. Humans are not static beings, but are capable of change. From an egocentric state at birth, a person can develop towards reciprocity and eventually a social-centric moral orientation, where self-interest is subordinated to the common good. Humans have innate cognitive, affective, aesthetic, and moral potentials. This defines their intrinsic worth and human equality, which in turn justifies equal human rights and integrity. Humanist ethics is all about developing your own human potential. Like remember when Elle realized that she wasn't just some blonde with a shopping obsession, she had way more to offer. Well, developing your cognitive, emotional, aesthetic, and moral potential is what makes you good. And that's a universal concept. When we help others achieve their potential, we're doing the right thing. Like what Elle always say, you gotta look forward home. So now we gotta help others too. Every individual has a primary duty to develop their own human potentials to the fullest. This is seen as a non-negotiable, unconditional obligation. Humanism emphasizes reciprocal duties. Just as you have the right to develop your potentials, you must respect and support the developments of others' potentials as well. This mutual support is essential for the development of a moral society. Okay, but now that we know about developing your potential, What about your moral obligation? In humanist ethics, you have a duty to develop your own potentials and to encourage others to do the same. Like, think about it. You have a moral responsibility to make sure that your action helps others develop their potentials. And yes, it's all about supporting each other's growth. So, how do we apply this to real life? Think about the moral obligations we have. We're responsible for promoting the growth of ourselves and others. This is where the ethics comes in. Those things you should be doing, like supporting your friends, advocating for equal opportunities, and most importantly, doing what's right, not just what's easy. In the movie, there's a moment when Elle had to choose between telling the truth and keeping a promise. Remember when she found out that Brooke Taylor Wentham was innocent? The right thing to do would have been to share what she knew, but she couldn't. She had made a promise to her, and I believe that keeping that promise was the right thing to do, even if it meant keeping a secret for a while. The humanist view here is that she acted from duty, not because it was going to give her any personal gain, but because she believed that the act itself, the keeping of a promise, was morally right. This is the categorical imperative. You act because the action is right, not because of the consequences. And even though telling the truth would have been the morally obvious thing to do later on, know that following through on a promise was part of developing your own moral integrity. That's a huge part of humanist ethics. Now let's talk about opportunities. Opportunities in life are like literally the game changer. Without opportunities, how are you supposed to achieve anything? It's like how can someone from a poor background ever become the next Elle Woods without being given the chance? That's why we need to make sure that opportunities are available to everyone. It's all about equality. And guess what? In a truly just society, if one person gets an opportunity, everyone should get the same chance to succeed. Remember when she was trying to help Paulette, the hairdresser? She was stuck, and Elle saw potential in her that she didn't even see in herself. She didn't think she could get a job, but Elle was like, Paulette, you're amazing. You have so much potential. You just need the right opportunity. And what did she do? She helped her. Elle encouraged her to believe in herself and go after the things she wanted, like getting her own man. Hello, Kyle, the UPS guy, and getting her baby was fun. The point is, she helped her see that she had a right to develop her potential just like anyone else. In the world of humanist ethics, if one person gets an opportunity, then everyone should have access to the same opportunities. It's about fairness and equality. So when society has inequalities, like say systematic barriers that prevent some people from achieving their dreams, that's where the government or the system needs to step in and make sure everyone has access to opportunities. The humanist principle of justice is all about fair distribution, like when society ensures that everyone has the resources they need to thrive. Which leads me to my next point, justice. It's simple. If society gives you opportunities, you gotta make sure others get those opportunities too. So how do we create a society where no one is left behind? By making sure every person, no matter their background, gets a shot at being their best self. Just outwards proving that anyone can make it even if they're underestimated. This is like the most important concept in humanist ethics. It's the idea that we are all connected and we can reach our full potential if we're only thinking about ourselves. In humanist ethics, we need to think beyond our own interests and focus on helping the whole society develop. And if we're talking about a just society, it's clear we all need to work together because no one can really thrive alone, right? It's about being social-centric, which means thinking beyond yourself. So remember when Elle helped Warner understand that he wasn't the only one with goals, and remember when she stood up for Brooke Taylor Windham, who was accused of a crime she didn't commit. Every action she took in that movie wasn't just about her. It was about helping others, encouraging them to see their value, and creating a better environment for everyone. It's like she always saying, whoever said that orange is the new pink is seriously disturbed. Because it's not about the color or the outside stuff. It's about what we all bring to the table as humans. So when So when she stands up for someone, she's not just doing it for herself. She's doing it because we're all connected. It's like we're it's like we're all in this together. Just like when she helped her friends at law school. She didn't just do it to get ahead. She did it because she knew they'd all benefit from working together. And the last part of our discussion, the Humanist Creed, presents a systematic summary of the important tenets of the humanist ethics. To provide a quick but incisive overview, this is a quotation of the creed in full. I believe that the ultimate end of all human actions must be the full development of man's human potential. That intrinsic goodness is experienced in the process of human development, and that all actions that hasten this development are right. That man's primary duty is to develop all his potentials to the fullest. I believe that man's human potentials define his intrinsic worth, dignity, equality rights, that no man should attempt to develop his potentials at the expense of arresting the development of his fellow men, that man's duty to his fellow men is to treat the development of their potentials as his own. I believe that man by nature is a social being because he cannot develop his human potentials in isolation. That the unconditional obligation of society is the provision of opportunities for human development equally to all members. That the end of social process, the direction of social development must be towards a society where the opportunity available to one member must in principle be available to all the rest. I believe that the purpose of human societies and the meaning of their histories can be interpreted from the perspective of the emergence of new and varied opportunities for harnessing human potentials. That the opportunities for human development as an analytical tool can be used as an index of social development. They may be numerous, limited, or varied equally or unequally distributed. That various historical epochs can be evaluated in terms of their capability to equitably distribute opportunities in life to their members. I believe that the limit of what men can achieve is circumscribed by the totality of the opportunities in life provided for by the social structures at a particular period of its history. That man's inhumanity to man can only be perpetuated by an unjust social structure that deprives the members of the freedom to develop their potentials. That we should move away from the utilitarian moral framework because it has a way of perpetuating the class interests of the rich and powerful. I believe that I believe that the surest way of correcting centuries of human degradation is by adopting the humanist principle of justice of providing for more opportunities and benefits to those members born with no resources at all to develop their human potentials. That the principle of justice must be used as a standard for evaluating government policies, laws, and programs. That if government is efficient, the existence of an opportunity will guarantee equal results. Finally, I believe that government must be the instrument of society for promoting human liberty by redressing radical inequality through the maximization of freedom by differential distribution of opportunities in life among the members. That as long as government is faithful to the humanist principle of justice, government deserves the loyalty and obedience of the citizen. Hmm. That's when the government reneges on its obligation. It is the moral responsibility of the citizenry to replace it. So my message to you is this. If we want a better society, we need to think about what everyone can achieve. We all have the potential to do great things, but we can't get there without equal opportunities and mutual support. and a commitment to helping each other. Thank you for listening, and remember, you are capable of so much more than you think. Go out there, be fabulous, and make the world a better place. And remember, if L can do it, you can too. Now go out there and bend and snap your way to success.